Now to the war in Ukraine, and European leaders speaking with President Trump today on the state of the talks aimed at ending a conflict. It comes as Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is now floating the idea of holding elections during wartime, possibly within the next 30 to 60 to 90 days, if it can be done safely and properly. Let's bring in Andrew Rasiulis. He's a former Canadian National Defence official, and he's a fellow with the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. Hello, Andrew. Thanks for your time.
Hello, Todd.
How realistic is it to think that Ukraine can actually hold elections in the middle of a war?
Not impossible, but doubtful. I mean, the key thing that Zelensky says he wants security guarantees, predominantly from the United States, from Europe. He didn't say what that means. One can surmise it could mean things like ceasefires, okay? But, you know, the Russians would have to agree to that. And how are you going to get them to agree to that? It's highly unlikely that any of this will work. This is all rhetorical, I believe, because this came off the cuff when Zelensky was told about Trump's comments to Politico yesterday, where he was saying, you know, the Ukrainians are dragging the elections out. He's almost not a democracy. And he said, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it in 60 to 90 days. I want security guarantees. And then, of course, we'll have to legislate amendments to the martial law. But I think this is largely rhetorics. I do believe that a peace agreement, though, will include one day, when they agree, to elections being held in Ukraine, something like 100 days after a ceasefire and an agreement comes in place. That's a possibility.
So you think this is more of a negotiating tactic? It's not actually real. This is not what Zelensky actually wants or thinks is going to happen.
No, he's negotiating here. He's pushing back against Trump. Almost no Ukrainians want an election, so he doesn't have a domestic push at all. There are divisions politically in Ukraine, but nobody wants an election in the middle of the war. So he's getting no push domestically for that. This is pure politics with the Trump administration.
I mean, soldiers are fighting. The country is occupied. A huge number of Ukrainians have left the country. So those are all sorts of logistical challenges that would, have to be overcome in any sort of election. And then, of course, there is the worries about Russian election interference in any outcome that might come from an election. How do you think this is going to play out?
I think this is going to get wrapped up into an end game that I believe is already starting to take place, which is how to end the war. And you can't isolate this. So, Zelensky's going to be presenting a new plan to the Americans very shortly. There's this conversation taking place between Trump and the European leaders. So I think all these pieces are coming together in what is an end game that is taking place now. And I think the elections will be wrapped up in the end game process as part of an overall settlement, because the Russians will only agree to a ceasefire if they're getting an overall settlement of some sort that they can agree to.
Andrew Rasiulis with Global Affairs Canada. Good to see you. Thanks for this as always, Andrew. Much appreciated.
You're very welcome, Todd.